The series begins with Donovan McDaniel, a guy who gets caught by two strangers and ends up being treated very badly in a room. At that time, he gets really annoyed with the mean kidnappers and manages to fight them off, even though his hands are tied. But turns out, this whole thing was actually part of a movie he was working on. Now, let's talk about Pam, a girl in the story. She meets her mom, Richard, who asks her to be a translator for Donovan, who is an American model and actor working in Thailand. After Donovan finishes shooting his scenes for the movie, he's taking a break when a crew member asks his manager if he can do one more scene. The manager talks to Donovan about it, but he says no because it wasn't in the script they had originally given him. On the flip side, Pam got a job offer from her mom, but felt unsure about accepting it. She was confused because she needed permission from her grandparents, Poon and Solitary, to take on extra work. So her mom suggested she tell a little white lie and say that Pam got an assignment from the kindergarten where she worked. Hearing that, Pam agreed and said she wanted to use her translator salary to buy a birthday gift for her grandpa, since she lived with him and her grandma. At that time, Poon earned extra money by renting his house to a guy named Oud, who ran a money market. Shortly after, Pam asked Oud for gift ideas, and he suggested a tablet because Poon liked watching videos. So Pam asked Oud to help her choose the right tablet for her grandpa. Meanwhile, Donovan had just finished swimming when his producer, Pete, came to talk to him. Pete was upset with Donovan because he caused problems and had to convince a client to forgive him. Pete also mentioned that Donovan's manager had quit because he couldn't handle Donovan's behavior. However, Donovan didn't seem to care much about the complaints and asked about a woman named Maria. There, Pete said he hadn't heard any news about her. Upon hearing that, Donovan looked sad as he gazed at a ring on his necklace with Maria's name on it. Back to Pam, who had just returned home and gave some fish food to Poon. She did this so that her grandpa wouldn't wonder why she took so long while shopping. After a while, Solitary came over, and Pam told her about meeting poor Richard, who offered her an extra job to earn more money for Poon's birthday gift. Pam also mentioned that poor Richard planned to meet Poon. This gave Solitary the idea to ask Poon to go out and meet her daughter, even though they didn't get along. On the beach, Pete and poor Richard were waiting for Da, who was supposed to sign a contract for a project with them. Since they didn't like Da very much, Pete secretly wrote articles that might make Da change her mind about signing the contract. Unfortunately, when she approached them, she signed the contract without reading Pete's articles. Pete and poor Richard were surprised and annoyed because their plan to cancel the contract had failed. Now, let's talk about Pam, who started working as a translator for Donovan. She was at the location of the model's photo shoot and accidentally bumped into him. There, Pam introduced herself as the new translator, thinking Donovan couldn't speak Thai. But to her surprise, he understood the crew's requests, and even when the photographer explained something, Donovan said he already got it. This left Pam wondering why Donovan had hired a translator if he understood Thai. Meanwhile, during Da's photo shoot on the beach, things didn't go well because she refused to work with the model they had chosen for her. So Pete and poor Richard showed her several other models to pick from. But Da didn't like any of them and said she wouldn't do the shoot if there weren't any models that interested her. Over at Donovan's shoot location, he was still busy selecting his outfits. At the same time, poor Richard messaged Pam to ask how her daughter was doing as a translator. Pam also tried to take a photo of Donovan to send to her mom, but Donovan thought she might share it on social media, so he scolded her and deleted the picture from her phone. Then he closed the dressing room curtain and got back to work. Now back to Da, who had chosen Jessica and Donovan as models. Soon after, poor Richard called Pam and asked her to bring Donovan to the beach for the shoot. Pam explained that Donovan's shoot wasn't done yet, but poor Richard insisted on having her daughter bring him to the beach. After the call, Pam informed Donovan about poor Richard's request and told him that there was a replacement model sent for him for the shoot that day. Upon hearing that, Donovan eventually followed Pam to where poor Richard was. On the flip side, Pete is having a hard time reaching Jessica, who appears to be spending time with a guy. Poor Richard also tried to help by getting in touch with Jessica and asking her to hurry to the shooting location within an hour. Then Jessica quickly got ready and went to the photo shoot location as poor Richard had instructed. At Donovan's previous photo shoot location, things got chaotic after the model left, even though the shoot wasn't finished yet. Turning back to Da, who was getting frustrated, she thought about canceling the project because Donovan hadn't arrived. Luckily, he showed up just in time, and Pam was asked to take him to the dressing room. When they got to the dressing room, Donovan met Jessica, who seemed to know him well. Pam thought about leaving the room so Donovan could talk to Jessica, but he stopped her and asked her to stay so he wouldn't be alone with Jessica. Even so, Jessica tried to tease Donovan in front of Pam. On another occasion, Pam wanted to go home, but Pete stopped her because poor Richard had just left and asked Pam to temporarily take her place. At that time, Pam couldn't say no, so she ended up helping with the photo shoot that Donovan and Jessica were doing. This made Pam feel embarrassed because it seemed like Jessica and Da were fighting over Donovan. Then, once the photo shoot was over, Donovan asked Pam why she hadn't gone home yet. There, Pam explained that Pete had asked her to help with his work, but now that all the shooting was done, she was planning to head home. Donovan actually wanted to go with her, but his plan fell through when Pete told him that Da had invited him to dinner, and it could impact his future career cause Da could offer him more projects. Hearing this, Donovan agreed to the dinner invitation. Meanwhile, Pam asked if she could go home before it got dark, but Pete asked her to stay overnight and help him prepare for the photo shoot the next morning. She was kind of forced to agree. Shortly after Pete left, Donovan invited Pam to dinner, but she declined because she hadn't been invited by Da. When Pam got to her room, she called Savitri. Ood, who answered the phone, explained to Savitri that Pam couldn't come home tonight due to work. When Poon found out that his granddaughter hadn't come home, Savitri had to tell a little white lie and said that Pam was out of town for work to avoid upsetting Poon. Meanwhile, in her hotel room, after Pam finished her phone call, the hotel clerk brought food that someone had ordered for her. There she suspected it was from Donovan because of an English message she found. At that time, she didn't expect Donovan to do something nice, especially since many people disliked him. This was different from Pam, who always feared being disliked by others, especially after poor Richard left her when she was little with her grandparents. A little while later, while Pam was in the bathroom, she had a feeling someone was on her room's balcony. She quickly checked and was surprised to find Donovan climbing onto her balcony. She pulled him inside to prevent him from falling, even though he ended up falling onto her floor. There, Pam asked why Donovan had come to her room when he was supposed to be at dinner with Da. He explained that he intentionally left the dinner early, even though it hadn't finished yet. 90 minutes ago, Donovan and Pete were having dinner with Da. There, Pete asked Donovan to treat her well, and she was happy, even giving him a gift of perfume that she sprayed on his clothes. Shortly after, Jessica, who saw the dinner, decided to join in, even though Da tried to get her to leave. At that time, Donovan felt uncomfortable with the two women teasing him, so he asked for permission to go to the bathroom, and then went back to his room. Once in his room, Donovan messaged Pete and asked him to come up with an excuse to avoid dinner. Pete also told Da and Jessica that Donovan had returned to his room because of a headache. Back to the present, Donovan was still talking about what happened during dinner when suddenly someone knocked on Pam's room door. Pam thought it might be Da at the door, but Donovan explained that it wasn't Da. About 15 minutes earlier, Jessica, who had Donovan's room key, had purposely entered his room. However, she didn't find anyone there because Donovan had quietly escaped and entered Pam's room through the balcony. Right now, Jessica was trying to get into Pam's room, even though Pam was trying to make her leave. When Jessica saw Donovan come out of the bathroom and noticed Pam wearing a bathrobe, she thought that they had been together intimately. At that time, Jessica was disappointed in Donovan and quickly left Pam's room. But Donovan actually had plans to sleep in Pam's room after seeing Jessica enter his own room. After Jessica left, Pam got into bed while covering herself with a pillow. Donovan tried to reassure her that he wouldn't do anything to her, especially since he intended to sleep on the sofa. Donovan also apologized to Pam because he had made things difficult for her. Some time later, Pam woke up from her sleep and was surprised to see Donovan not on the sofa, but lost in thought alone on the balcony. She approached him because he couldn't sleep, and they ended up talking. They discussed how Donovan could speak Thai, but still had a translator like Pam. Donovan mentioned that he didn't need a translator but a manager, which made Pam realize that poor Richard had tricked her into following all of Donovan's activities, when she was only supposed to be a translator. Donovan asked Pam about her previous job, and she explained that she used to be an English teacher at a kindergarten. He thought she liked kids a lot, but Pam clarified that she enjoyed seeing the children with their parents when they dropped off or picked up their kids from school. Pam felt jealous of her students' happiness and secretly shed some tears. She quickly pretended to yawn to hide her tears from Donovan. The next morning, Pam woke up to find a note from Donovan, who had left her room. Meanwhile, in Donovan's room, Jessica hugged a man who was sleeping next to her, thinking it was Donovan. But she soon realized it was Pete and screamed in shock. There, Pete hurriedly left when he realized there was a commercial shoot that morning. Later, Pam was on the hotel balcony and noticed Donovan filming on the beach. They exchanged glances from a distance. Once the filming was over, Pam met with Poor Rich to inquire about the job she had been given. However, Poor Richard didn't explain much and only offered Pam extra payment for the work she did as Donovan's manager. Annoyed, Pam declined the money and decided to go home. When she got home, Pam found Poon, who was upset because she hadn't come home the previous night. There, she reassured him by explaining that she wouldn't stay out overnight without his permission. Pam also invited Poon to go out for a meal together on his birthday. At first, he refused, but after Pam continued to persuade him, he eventually accepted the invitation. On another date, Pam and Ood were seen helping her grandparents provide food to the monks. After Poon and Seo-won went back inside the house, Ood gave Pam the tablet he had ordered for her, making her very happy. Pam thanked him for helping her prepare a birthday gift for Poon. In the evening, Pam went out to eat with her grandparents. When they reached the restaurant, Poon asked Pam and Seo-won to place their orders while he went elsewhere. Soon after, Poon went to an ice cream shop where he met a boy named Luke, who didn't have enough money to pay for his ice cream. At that time, Poon offered to pay for it, but Luke refused and went to a man named Dave, whom he called his father, to ask for money. Not long after, Poon saw Poor Richard meeting with Luke and Dov, which made him realize that his daughter had remarried. This was such a shock to Poon that he had a heart attack. Poor Richard and Pam, who witnessed the situation, panicked and rushed over to him. Unexpectedly, Donovan came to help Poon, who was about to fall, and then took Pam's grandfather to the hospital. While Poon was being checked, Donovan tried to reassure Pam, who was worried about her grandfather's condition. Shortly after, Seo-won and Poor Richard arrived after Pam's mother told Dov and Luke to go home because she was afraid that Poon would get angry with her again. There, Seo-won thanked Donovan, who then went out to buy food for Pam and her family. Meanwhile, Seo-won gave Pam a tablet as a gift for Poon, which had fallen earlier. A short while later, Lud came over and patted Pam on the shoulder to comfort her because she was feeling sad. Seeing how close they were, Poor Richard began to suspect that Ood might be Pam's boyfriend. However, Pam quickly clarified that Ood was just renting Poon's house. Around the same time, Donovan, who had just returned, also misinterpreted the closeness between Pam and Ood. Feeling uneasy, he decided to leave without saying goodbye. After the examination, the doctor gave Pam and her family the news that Poon had a blocked artery and needed surgery right away. When Pam and the others went into Poon's room, he was upset to see Poor Richard visiting him. His anger grew when she offered to pay for his medical expenses and the upcoming surgery. Upon hearing this, Poon refused to accept money from Poor Richard and asked her to leave, even though she expressed her desire to reconcile with him. Unfortunately, Poon became even more agitated and eventually fainted again due to another heart attack. The doctors and nurses quickly asked Pam and the others to leave the room so they could provide immediate medical attention to Poon. Outside the hospital room, Pam discussed the cost of Poon's surgery with Seo-won and Ood. When they learned that the expenses were quite high, Ood offered to help with some of the operation costs. Poor Richard also wanted to assist, but Pam and Seo-won declined because they didn't want Poon to know about it. So Pam decided she would find extra money to cover her grandfather's surgery. To clear her thoughts, Pam went outside for some fresh air, and there she bumped into Donovan. He unexpectedly asked her to become his manager. Pam suspected Donovan offered her the job out of pity, but he denied it. He was genuinely impressed by how well she had carried out her manager duties before. Pam felt relieved and touched because this job would help her earn extra money for Poon's surgery. Without realizing it, she shed tears in Donovan's arms. After regaining her composure, Pam returned to the hospital and met with Poor Richard. She explained that she had decided to work as Donovan's manager to gather money for Poon's operation. Pam then talked to her grandfather to seek his permission for her to take on a part-time job, so she could earn extra money for his surgery and eventually bring him back home. On another occasion, Pam had a conversation with Ood about her job as Donovan's manager. Ood was concerned that she might have romantic feelings for the model, but Pam denied it. Ood felt relieved but was disappointed when Pam mentioned that she didn't have any romantic feelings for him either. Nonetheless, he advised her not to hesitate to ask him for help if she needed assistance from others. Pam agreed and said her goodbyes before heading home. Meanwhile, in a different scene, Donovan strolled through an alley where homeless people lived, putting some items into his basket. There he met Maria, who shared some of her food with him. They had a conversation about Maria's work and her aspirations for the future. During their chat, Donovan was startled by Maria's sudden disappearance and the sight of blood on her hand. In that moment, he woke up from his dream and quickly checked his own palms to make sure there was no blood. The next morning, Pam visited Poor Rich to ask about her managerial responsibilities. Poor Rich had explained all the tasks Pam would be handling and provided her with a company tablet to assist her in her work. She also shared the door code to Donovan's house. To kick off her job, Pam went to Donovan's house to pick him up. Upon entering the house, she found Donovan exercising and informed him that she was there to take him to a photo shoot. Pam also shared the day's shooting schedule and asked Donovan to get ready promptly as they needed to head to the first shooting location. While Donovan was taking a shower, Pam, who was cleaning the model's glasses, accidentally noticed a stack of sleeping pill bottles. She recalled Donovan's words about having difficulty sleeping and started to worry that he might have mental health issues affecting his ability to sleep well. Meanwhile, at the modeling agency's office, Poor Richard is trying to explain to an annoyed client why she unilaterally replaced Donovan. There she tells the client that she sent another model as compensation, but the client is still upset, leading to an argument between them. Fortunately, Pete steps in and manages to calm them down, suggesting they discuss the matter calmly. However, the client refuses and decides to leave the agency. As for Pam and Donovan, they have arrived at the parking lot of a building where Donovan's photo shoot will take place. When Pam is about to enter the building, Jessica's car suddenly speeds toward her, but Donovan saves his manager just in time. At that time, Jessica, without feeling guilty, claims that she couldn't see Pam clearly because she was wearing sunglasses. Pam boldly implies that Jessica might not deserve a driver's license. Upon hearing that, Jessica gets annoyed and questions why Pam is still with Donovan, and Pam explains that she is his manager. Once Donovan is at the shooting location, he changes his clothes and Jessica instructs Pam to do various tasks. Donovan eventually intervenes, telling Pam not to follow Jessica's orders. However, Pam still has to do Jessica's requests to ensure Donovan's photo shoot goes smoothly, even though her feet are injured from walking around in high heels. After Pam bought the snacks and coffee that Jessica asked for, the model unexpectedly pushed her. Luckily, Donovan was there to catch Pam and prevent her from falling. Donovan then entrusted his necklace to Pam as he was about to start a photo shoot with Jessica in a bathtub. During the shoot, he continued to pay attention to Pam, who was supervising the photo session. Once all the work was completed, Donovan and Pam were surprised by the sight of a blonde woman who triggered memories of Maria for Donovan. He tried to chase after the woman, but it turned out not to be Maria, causing him to become stuck in the middle of the road and almost get hit by a car. Fortunately, Pam came to his rescue just in time, preventing a potential accident. Pam felt weak after the incident, and Donovan noticed her injured leg. Then he carried her back to the shooting building and gave her some shoes. After dropping off Donovan, Pam headed home but received a message from her grandmother, who had gone to visit Poon at the hospital and asked Pam to go shopping. Pam went to Ud's mini market to buy some items, and when she was finished shopping, Ud's motorcycle broke down. At that moment, Pam decided to walk home, and on her way, two thugs tried to bother her. Fortunately, Donovan arrived and confronted the thugs, making them leave. However, his hand got injured in the process, triggering traumatic memories from his past when he had seriously hurt someone. These memories caused Donovan to experience panic attacks, and Pam, witnessing his distress, tried to comfort him by letting Donovan hug her while he cried. A little while later, Donovan, who had started to calm down, let go of his hug, and Pam checked on him again. There, Donovan assured her that he was okay, and then used his hoodie as a makeshift shopping bag to help Pam gather her scattered shopping items. Afterward, he accompanied her home. Meanwhile, Ud, who was walking home, was surprised to see Pam's shopping items scattered on the ground. At the same time, Donovan and Pam had reached Pam's house by this time, and when Donovan asked about the necklace he had given to Pam, she reached into her pocket to return it but couldn't find it. She realized she might have dropped it at the money market. At that moment, Ud arrived, holding the necklace, which Donovan took. At first, Ud thought Donovan had taken Pam's necklace, but Donovan clarified that the necklace was indeed his. Donovan then bid farewell to Pam, reminding her to take her medicine. After that, Ud asked about what had happened, and upon hearing Pam's story, he felt guilty for not escorting her home from the money market. He promised to never let her walk home alone again. When Pam arrived home, Seo-won had returned and noticed men's shoes in the house. Pam explained that the shoes were borrowed from someone when her foot got injured. Although Pam didn't mention Donovan's name, Seo-won seemed to recognize the shoes as his. At that time, Pam didn't want to discuss it further and handed over the shopping items from Donovan's hoodie. When Seo-won asked about the hoodie, Pam simply said it was a new style of shopping bag. While in her room, Pam treated her wound, and she couldn't help but think about the necklace Donovan had given her and how important it must be to him. The next day, at the agency office, Pete showed a picture of Donovan holding Pam, which had spread on social media. Surprisingly, someone took a secret photo during that incident and sent it to poor Richard's client, who had previously been upset when poor Richard accidentally replaced Donovan with another model. At that time, poor Richard suspected that the client might have intentionally shared the photo to annoy her. The following day, Donovan had another nightmare and woke up when Pam contacted him to let him know she would be picking him up soon. When she arrived at his house and returned his shoes, he suddenly placed her on the bed and moved closer to her, as if he was going to kiss her. However, Donovan explained that he was just practicing for an advertisement casting and showed her a script. Pam was surprised by his actions but relieved to know it was for a role. He playfully teased her by whispering that he already understood the script's meaning. Pam then urged him to get ready quickly so they wouldn't be late for the casting. In the meantime, Seo-won met Ode to return the hoodie that was used the previous night to carry Pam's shopping. When Ode mentioned that the hoodie wasn't Pam's, Seo-won tried to change the subject by asking him to pick her up, because Hoon would be coming home from the hospital soon. On the other hand, at Donovan's house, Pam was waiting for him to finish showering. She noticed a necklace with a ring that had the name Maria on it, thinking it might be Donovan's girlfriend's name. Pam also assumed that Donovan had prepared a gift for his girlfriend when she saw a big paper bag on the table. While she tried to sneak a peek inside the bag, Donovan suddenly shows up in the bathroom, and Pam nervously mentioned that she saw something going into the paper bag. Donovan then handed the paper bag to Pam, explaining that he had a gift for her. Hearing that, Pam was pleasantly surprised, especially when she realized he had bought her a pair of shoes. Soon after, Donovan asked her to try on the shoes, and though Pam hesitated initially because she felt they were too expensive, she eventually agreed after his insistence. Shortly after, she received a call from poor Richard, who informed her that Donovan's casting schedule had been canceled. Afterward, Pam and Donovan rushed to the agency's office to find out more about it. When they arrived at the office, Pam met her mother to discuss Donovan's casting cancellation. Poor Richard showed them a photo of Pam and Donovan circulating on social media and scolded Pam. When Pam tried to explain what really happened, poor Richard didn't seem interested in hearing her side of the story. This left Pam disappointed with her mother, and she chose to leave. Donovan saw Pam coming out of poor Richard's room with a sad expression, and he tried to stop her, but she quickly walked away to calm down. Pete explained the situation to Donovan, and he went to talk to poor Richard. She calmly told Donovan that she had resolved the issue by giving a statement to the media, explaining that Donovan was helping his new assistant, who had just been released from the hospital. However, in return, she insisted that he must have dinner with Da. Donovan refused because he knew what Da wanted from him, but poor Richard didn't seem to care and still forced him to meet with Da. Up on the building's rooftop, Pam, who was alone, reminisced about her childhood and the time when poor Richard had abandoned her. She wondered if her mother truly loved her or if she considered Pam to be a mistake from her past. Shortly after, Donovan arrived and saw Pam wiping away her tears. He invited her to go to a sports shop to help take her mind off her sadness. Donovan even joined her in trying out some sports equipment and shared that he always exercised when he felt down. Pam also shared some memories from her childhood when her grandfather used to prevent her from playing roller skating and other potentially dangerous games. She realized that he did it out of love and concern for her safety. She admitted that she wasn't sure if her decision to work with poor Richard was the right one, especially since she hadn't told her grandfather about it. She expressed her gratitude for meeting Donovan. Later that evening, after Pam got back home, Donovan contacted her to let her know that he had just arrived at her house. During their conversation, he asked about Pam's school and learned that she was on a semester break, allowing her to work as his manager and earn extra money to support Poon's care. Donovan also shared that he pursued a modeling career to become more well-known in the hopes that his older sister, Maria, who had come to Thailand before him, could find him easily. Pam felt relieved to learn that Maria was not Donovan's girlfriend, as she had previously thought. They continued to chat late into the night, and Pam even sang songs for him until he fell asleep. Meanwhile, Da was seen choosing perfume while having a video call with Donovan, who was preparing to sleep. She admitted that she contacted him because she wanted to see his face and discuss the dinner menu for the next day. Donovan, not very enthusiastic, asked Da to select the menu for him. After ending the call, Da put on a protective mask while holding a perfume. The following morning, Pam was surprised to find that she had chatted with Donovan for 3 hours the previous night. Soon after, Seo-won entered the room and asked Pam to pick up Poon from the hospital. Before she go, Pam checked her schedule and requested Seo-won to go with Eud first, because she needed to attend to her work. After taking a shower, Pam decided to check social media to see if there was any news about the viral incident involving her and Donovan. However, she found it strange that all the negative comments about him had disappeared, as if someone had deliberately removed them. Meanwhile, at Donovan's house, he was busy exercising when he received a suit from Da, who asked him to wear it for their dinner that evening. On the other hand, when Pam and Seo-won brought Poon back home, he asked about the hospital fees Pam had paid. There, Pam tried to reassure him, explaining that she had earned the money from her part-time job. She also gave Poon a tablet as a birthday gift, which made him a bit uneasy. Nevertheless, she encouraged her grandfather to make good use of the gift. A little while later, Donovan went to Pam's house, and she met him outside. At the same time, Poon asked who had come, and when Pam got confused on how to answer her grandfather, Wood showed up, saying that Donovan was his friend. Pam then went back inside to explain to Poon, and then returned outside to ask Donovan why he came to her house. He admitted that he just wanted to see Pam's face, and she, who couldn't stop thinking about it, decided to invite him to go to the office. Soon after, Pam went back inside to get her bag and said goodbye to her annoyed grandfather, who told her to warn Eud's friend not to ring people's doorbells carelessly. Outside, Eud warned Donovan not to come to Pam's house because her family wouldn't like him. However, Donovan didn't really respond to Eud's words and immediately asked Pam to leave with him. After they both arrived at the bank, Pam wondered why Donovan had brought her there. He explained that his older sister Maria, who used to work in Thailand, used to send money to him while he was still in America. He was trying to find her by looking for information at the bank and asking for surveillance camera footage from when Maria made transactions. Unfortunately, the bank didn't allow him to see it, so he had to wait for Maria to come to the bank in the hope of finding her. Because she had to wait for a long time, Pam ended up falling asleep in the waiting room. When she woke up, she realized Donovan had left. Surprisingly, Donovan had intentionally left the bank to buy some food for her. While they were eating, Pam suggested that he try to find Maria on social media. Then Pam invited Donovan to visit an empty kindergarten during the semester break. She even printed a photo of Maria and put a missing person word on it. During this time, Donovan accidentally saw a photo of Pam and tried to kiss her, but she stopped him by covering the photo with her hand, which led to an awkward moment. To break the tension, Pam asked to go to the bathroom to avoid Donovan. When she returned, she recorded a video of Donovan searching for Maria's whereabouts. Back at home, Seo-won was baking a cake and noticed that Poon was searching for the tablet Pam had given him. There, Pam had uploaded a video of Donovan, but she felt it wasn't interesting enough, so she suggested that Donovan add some movements to it. In response, Donovan hugged her and thanked her. However, he received an unhappy message and refused to share it with Pam. When Poon was still searching for his tablet at home, he accidentally found Pam's tablet that she had left behind. He saw a pop-up message notification about a swimsuit photo shoot, which made him angry because he suspected that his granddaughter might be involved in something he didn't approve of. Meanwhile, Donovan intentionally invited Pam to his house for lunch. He was even seen cooking some cheesy dishes with her. When Pam offered to help in the kitchen, Donovan approached her on purpose, but Pam chose to clean his house instead. She started vacuuming the room, and Donovan became captivated by her. He gently pushed her onto the sofa and was about to kiss her when he remembered the food he was cooking. Around the same time, Pam noticed a message on Donovan's phone about a dinner he was planning with someone named Da. She felt annoyed that he hadn't told her about it and decided to leave. There, Donovan tried to explain that he had accepted the dinner invitation for her, but she didn't believe him. Shortly after, Seo-won called Pam and asked her to come home immediately, while Poon, who had taken his wife's phone, questioned Pam about her part-time job. Pam panicked when she realized that Poon had discovered her lie. On the other hand, Donovan received a message from Da with the location of their dinner plans. That evening, Poon was still waiting for Pam to come home when Oud arrived with something for Poon. When Poon saw Oud, he asked the young man about Pam's real part-time job. Meanwhile, Donovan seemed to have gone to meet Da, who had been waiting for him somewhere. Pam, who had just come home and wanted to explain her real job, was surprised to see Poon, who was busy with the massage tool Oud had brought. Even Poon seemed to have forgotten his earlier anger. To avoid Poon, and since she hadn't had dinner, Pam planned to buy food outside. However, Poon told her not to, so Oud offered to accompany her, and this made Poon agree to let his granddaughter leave. As for Donovan, he was with Da, who seemed to be trying to tempt him to dance, but he refused and asked them to finish dinner quickly. Da gave him a perfume she had sprayed on his clothes earlier and teased him, saying she would give him a big project if he fulfilled all her wishes. At that time, Donovan tried to resist, so she returned to her seat and gave him a drink. Donovan also tried to convince Da that she couldn't make him drunk just by giving him alcoholic drinks. Meanwhile, Oud took Pam to the mini-market because he needed to watch over it at night. He shared some of his mini-market food with Pam for her dinner. During their meal, Pam asked why Poon wasn't angry with her anymore, and Oud explained to Poon that Pam's job was just a temporary replacement for her friend's job. After warming up the food, Oud accompanied Pam to eat outside the mini-market. While Pam was eating the cheesy meal, she suddenly remembered her unsuccessful kiss with Donovan, which made her annoyed and accidentally bit her lip until it bled. Oud quickly gave her a tissue and suspected that she was busy with something else. Then, once Pam finished her food, Oud walked her home through a street where she had encountered troublemakers before. This made Pam grab Oud's sleeve out of fear, as she remembered the previous incident. At that time, Oud tried to comfort her by holding her hand and invited her to go home right away. On the other hand, Da teased Donovan again, and he began to feel lightheaded after smelling the scent of her perfume. His body started to feel warm, and Da pulled him into a swimming pool. When Donovan regained consciousness, he pushed Da away as she continued to approach him and quickly tried to leave the area. Unfortunately, the place was locked, which meant he couldn't go anywhere, so he contacted Pam for help. After Pam found Donovan's location, she asked Oud to go with her to rescue Donovan, who was hiding in a restroom stall. At that time, Da tried to break down the restroom door and even attempted to tempt Donovan by climbing into the next stall. Donovan quickly ran out of the restroom, but he was chased by several guards. Eventually, he chose to escape using the emergency stairs. At the same time, Pam and Oud ran a red light to reach Donovan's location faster. When they arrived at the building Donovan had told them about, they hurriedly got into the elevator to reach the 15th floor. Unfortunately, they couldn't access that floor using the elevator. So Pam randomly pressed a floor and planned to use the emergency stairs to get to the 15th floor where Donovan was. When the elevator reached the 13th floor, Pam and Oud, who were about to head to the emergency stairs, heard a commotion. It was Donovan trying to fight Da's bodyguards. In that moment, Donovan fought them one by one, and when one of the guards was about to hit him with a bottle, Pam intervened. The annoyed bodyguard then attempted to throw the bottle at Pam, but Donovan quickly shielded her from the broken glass bottle with his body. Donovan, feeling a rush of emotions, then fought the guard until the guard fainted. After defeating Da's guards, Pam and Oud hurriedly took Donovan away, but Da, holding her injured nose, tried to stop them. Oud recorded her and threatened to upload the video online if she got closer. With Oud's clever thinking, Donovan finally managed to escape from Da. However, the effects of Da's anesthetic made Donovan want to kiss Pam, so Oud decided to sit in the back seat with Donovan and asked Pam to drive. On their way, Donovan received a message from Da, saying she was at his house. He asked Pam to take him to the office, but she declined and wanted to take him home instead. Oud immediately objected because Poon would be angry with her and suggested that Donovan stay at his house. Upon arriving at his house, Oud intentionally splashed water on Donovan to help him recover from the effects of Da's anesthetic, while Pam secretly watched from behind a tree to check on Donovan's condition. Afterward, Oud lent Donovan some pajamas and offered him hot tea. They both started to brag about their closeness to Pam and felt like they were winning her heart. As Donovan prepared to sleep on the sofa, Oud gave him a pillow and blanket, while emphasizing that he was doing all of this for Pam. That night, Oud remembered how Pam had looked panicked when she heard that Donovan was in danger, while Pam was still thinking about Donovan's kindness to her. Donovan, on the other hand, was thinking about how Pam had helped him search for Maria. In the morning, Seo-won was surprised to see Pam watching Oud's house. There, Pam explained what had happened to Donovan, which had led him to stay overnight at Ood's house. Pam expressed her concern that the two young men might end up fighting because they didn't like each other. Savitri, who overheard the conversation, was actually curious about whether her granddaughter would choose between Donovan and Ood, but Pam said she hadn't made up her mind yet. Savitri also advised Pam to start thinking about who she genuinely cared about. As Pam was leaving, Poon, who was tending to the plants with Savitri, asked where she had been after having dinner with Ood. Pam lied, saying she had gone back to the office to retrieve some things she had left behind. Fortunately, Poon appeared to trust her and invited her and Savitri inside to show them an object. Poon then asked Pam to press a button on the device, and suddenly, Ood rushed in. Surprisingly, the object was an emergency button that Ood had made for Poon in case something happened to Pam's grandfather. Pam thanked Ood and then suggested he go home, especially as he looked like he had just woken up with a toothbrush in his hand. After Ood returned to his house, he woke up Donovan with his feet and mentioned that he would take a shower first. Donovan, who had woken up, expressed gratitude to Ood for offering him a ride. Meanwhile, Pam hurried to finish her breakfast because she had to get to work right away. Poon commented that he didn't like it when Pam took care of others so much that she neglected her own health. Pam felt annoyed by her grandfather's words, even though she was working to cover her medical expenses. Savitri, not wanting Poon and Pam to argue, asked her granddaughter to leave right away. As Pam walked out of the house, she seemed to reflect on her childhood, when she used to run away after Poon scolded her. But one day, Poon picked her up when she was in the rain and brought her home. Since then, Pam realized that her grandfather truly loved her, even though he often scolded her. Back in the present, when Pam went to Ood's house to bring porridge for Donovan and Ood, she bumped into Ood, who was about to take out the trash. She asked Donovan how he was last night. There, Ood reassured her that Donovan was fine, and then she went inside. After Donovan took a shower, Pam served the porridge she had bought for both Donovan and Ood. During this time, Pam asked Donovan why he went to see Da, and he explained that he did it to protect the people he loved. Hearing that, Pam didn't quite understand until he mentioned that he had to leave to protect her. Then, the atmosphere became awkward, and Pam tried to change the subject by discussing the possibility of Da suing Donovan. There, Ood reassured her that they had evidence from the recording he made. Donovan then asked about the relationship between Pam and Ood, so she explained that Ood was just a neighbor who often helped her and her family. Later, Pam drove Donovan to his house, and she asked him to wait in the car while she checked to make sure Da wasn't at Donovan's house. While Pam was checking, she got distracted by a magazine filled with photos of Donovan. Without realizing it, she entered the house and was startled when Donovan suddenly appeared, causing her to drop the magazine. Donovan teased Pam, saying he would give her the magazine. Pam felt embarrassed, said goodbye, and started to leave. However, Donovan complained of a headache, which made her decide to take him to the doctor. He initially refused but started moving closer to her. Just as they were about to kiss, poor Richard contacted Donovan to discuss their dinner with Da from the previous night. When Donovan arrived at the office, he got in trouble with poor Richard because he messed up the dinner. But Pam stood up for Donovan and said Da was trying to bother him. Poor Richard, who doesn't like arguments, scolded Pam instead and accused her of taking the manager job just to get close to Donovan. In that moment, Pam felt upset, even though she was working to pay for Poon's care, who got sick when poor Richard went abroad and returned with a new family. Then poor Richard slapped Pam when she heard this, and Pam said she never had a mother before and left the room. Donovan later found Pam alone and tried to comfort her, but she refused his hug and left. He then met poor Richard, who gave him his last salary. At the same time, Ood got an emergency call from Savitri because Poon's heart condition had worsened. He rushed to help Savitri take Poon to the hospital. On the way, Ood told Pam that her grandfather had fainted, making her panic and rush to the hospital without realizing she dropped an envelope of money from poor Richard. At the hospital, Pam was really upset when she saw Poon's condition. Savitri later told her that Poon had been having chest pain because he was worried about Pam, but he always refused to go to the hospital. Pam felt even sadder and blamed herself for it. Savitri tried to comfort her granddaughter. From a distance, Ood felt sad seeing Pam going through all of this alone. A few hours later, Pam asked Savitri if she could go home with Ood to get some things. When they got home, Ood told Pam not to keep her problems to herself and turned away so she could cry without anyone seeing. Pam finally broke down in tears on Ood's back, and unbeknownst to them, Donovan saw all of this from outside the fence. After Pam felt a bit better, she thanked Ood and went to her room to gather her things. At the same time, Hood saw Donovan standing outside the fence. At the hospital, poor Richard met Savitri and asked why Poon was sick again. Savitri explained that Poon was worried about Pam, who was working too hard, so Pam had decided to stop working. Poor Richard then assured her mother that Pam hadn't mentioned the fight that happened before she got fired. Meanwhile, when Hood arrived at the hospital, he gave Pam a check that Donovan had brought to her house while she was getting her things. Soon after, poor Richard went to the hospital toilet to contact Pete and talked about Pam. Pam had confessed to Savitri that she had quit her job, but what troubled her was that Pam didn't mention her argument with Pete at the office to Savitri. There, Pete advised poor Richard to apologize to Pam. Following Pete's suggestion, poor Richard invited Pam for a chat. Even though Pam didn't really want to see her mother, she still tried to talk to poor Richard, who was attempting to apologize. Meanwhile, Donovan was at home, recalling what Ode had said about Pam crying more often since she met Donovan. Ode hoped Donovan would stay away from Pam's life. As Pam talked to poor Richard, she returned the company tablet to her. Finally, they both returned to see Savitri, who was still waiting for news from the doctor. Shortly after, the doctor came out and said that Poon's condition had improved, which relieved Savitri. With this good news, Pam and the others planned to go home and rest before returning to the hospital to be with Poon. Poor Richard offered to give them a ride home, but Pam declined. Savitri secretly advised her granddaughter to make amends with poor Richard soon because time won't turn back. When Pam got home, Savitri told her to rest. Once in her room, Pam contacted Donovan to update him about Poon's condition and to let him know she had quit her job as his manager, so they wouldn't see each other anymore. In her heart, Pam hoped Donovan would ask her to stay, but instead, he prayed for her success in her new endeavors. After they hung up, both of them felt sad about the separation, even though they didn't do anything to change it. Meanwhile, Pete went to Da's office to meet her, but he couldn't get in because he didn't have an appointment. Annoyed, Pete publicly stated that he knew what Da had done to Donovan because his agency had conducted a blood test that showed Da had tried to poison Donovan during dinner. At that time, Pete asked Da to stop meddling with Donovan if she didn't want her business to be ruined by this information becoming public. A little later, Pete called poor Richard and confessed that he had only pretended to have done the blood test to scare Da. The next day, after Savitri left Poon's treatment room, Pam apologized to her grandfather for making him worried. She also told him she had quit her part-time job. Poon heard the apology and apologized to Pam for causing her trouble. Poon said he'd sell his gold and tablets to cover his treatment costs, but Pam refused and assured him that she had earned enough money from her part-time job. On the other hand, Pete went to Donovan's messy house and told him he had a lot of work to do. Donovan didn't seem to care about Pete's words and didn't mind paying a fine for canceling his work contract. A few days later, Poon was allowed to go home, and after picking him up, Pam went into his room and saw a pair of shoes given to him by Donovan. She decided to keep them. Soon after, poor Richard contacted Pam and asked her to come to the office. When Pam arrived, she saw several people who wanted to meet Donovan exercising at his house. Pam surprised Donovan by showing up at his house, and she mentioned that there was something she wanted to discuss, but would wait until after he showered. While waiting for Donovan to find he's showering, Pam noticed his messy house and decided to clean it up. When Donovan saw her cleaning, he reminded her that she wasn't his manager anymore. On the other hand, Donovan, thinking Pam came to persuade him to return to work, made it clear he didn't want to work with Paul Richard anymore. There, Pam explained that she came to his house not for work, but because of Maria, whom he had been searching for. She mentioned that several people had come to the office claiming to know Maria's whereabouts, and she was the only one who could verify their information. Donovan got excited about going to the office after hearing the good news, but Pam asked him to tidy up first. She even helped him shave. During this time, Pam asked why Donovan had disappeared, even though she had hoped he would support her during Poon's hospitalization. Donovan revealed that he didn't want Pam to get hurt or cry because of him. While Pam was cleaning the remaining shaving cream on Donovan's face, she brought up the day they almost kissed, which embarrassed her. There, he touched Pam's bright red cheek and thanked her for still being willing to meet him. When Donovan and Pam arrived at the office, Pete had helped them interview people who claimed to know about Maria. Unfortunately, most of these people didn't provide any information about her sister's whereabouts, and some even tried to take advantage of the situation by asking for money from Donovan. After the interviews were done, Pam asked everyone to leave. During this time, she noticed a woman looking at her with a worried expression. Pam felt like she recognized the woman from the bank when Donovan was waiting for Maria, but she couldn't remember where she had seen her before. That night, the woman, named Anya, was looking at Donovan's post and seemed interested in the same ring as Donovan's. Back to Pam. There she met Donovan and tried to encourage him not to give up on finding Maria. Shortly after, Jessica arrived and said she had met Maria and even had a photo with Donovan's older sister. Unfortunately, Jessica said she would show all the photos when Donovan came to her room. Despite his doubts, Donovan decided to go to Jessica's room a little later to see some photos of Maria. It was then that Jessica confessed that she missed their. A few days later, while Pam was cleaning her room, she came across Donovan's hoodie and the shoes he had given her, which made her miss him again. On another day, while she was preparing school materials, she found a photo that Donovan had seen before, of any romantic relationship with him. On another day, Donovan and Jessica were doing a photo shoot together, and they looked very close, making the crew think they were in a romantic relationship. Donovan even helped Jessica zip up her dress without hesitation. However, strangely, once the shoot was over and no one was watching, Donovan started treating Jessica coldly. When she got back to her room, she remembered the night Donovan had confirmed he no longer had feelings for her before he left with a photo of Maria. Jessica quietly cried because she had truly lost Donovan. A few days later, while Pam was cleaning her room, she came across Donovan's hoodie and the shoes he had given her, which made her miss him again. On another day, while she was preparing school materials, she found a photo that Donovan had seen before. After reading his message on the back of the photo, Pam realized that she really liked him, so she decided to go to his house. At the same time, Donovan, who also missed Pam, decided to meet her after seeing Pam's name written on his refrigerator. Unfortunately, when Pam arrived at Donovan's house, she couldn't find him inside. Eventually, she walked out of Donovan's house and saw him just returning. The two of them then ran toward each other and confessed their feelings. Shortly after, it started raining and Donovan immediately took Pam into the house, where they spent the night together. A little while later, while in Donovan's arms, Pam grabbed her phone and snapped a photo of their hands holding each other. She said she'd never forget that day with him. Before it got too late, Donovan decided to take Pam home. However, Pam, who was worried her grandparents would find out, asked Donovan to go to his own house instead. Donovan initially refused, but when Pam almost got hit by a passing motorcycle, he got concerned. He decided to keep his distance from Pam to avoid looking like he was taking her home. When they reached Pam's house, Donovan kissed her before saying goodbye. Later in her room, Pam video called Donovan, who asked her to be his manager again, but she declined because she had promised Poon to quit her job. The next morning, Pam hurried to work, claiming she needed to prepare teaching materials for the new school year. However, she was actually lying to Poon and secretly went to Donovan's house, where he suddenly put her in a playful neck lock from behind. She tried to escape his hold by biting his hand, and he explained that he wanted to teach her some self-defense techniques so she could protect herself since he couldn't escort her home every day. They then engaged in some self-defense training, and he used any mistakes she made as an excuse to kiss her. While they were practicing, Jessica showed up at Donovan's house, and he quickly asked Pam to hide. However, Pam refused and commented on Jessica's behavior, which didn't seem very polite. At that time, Jessica looked annoyed and seemed like she might slap Pam, but Donovan stopped her and told her to leave. Jessica then explained that she had come to pick Donovan up for a photo shoot where they would pose intimately together. Pam, not wanting to be outdone by Jessica, decided to accompany Donovan for the photo shoot. She made it clear that she didn't mind Donovan posing intimately with Jessica because it was just part of his job. When they got to the shooting location, Pam saw Jessica and Donovan looking very close, which made her uncomfortable. She chose to leave the place. Outside, she ran into poor Richard, so Pam had to lie and say she was delivering food to Donovan. After this incident, when poor Richard took Donovan home, she asked about his relationship with Pam and mentioned that Pam's grandfather wouldn't approve of her being close to Donovan, who was from a foreign background. In response to her question, Donovan finally admitted to being in a romantic relationship with Pam. On another occasion, poor Richard talked to Pam about her past mistake of getting pregnant before finishing school, which led to conflicts with Poon. She didn't want Pam to make the same mistake by being involved with someone from a foreign background, especially since Pam didn't really understand Donovan. Pam listened silently, thinking about her relationship with Donovan. When Pam got home, she found Ood playing with her younger half-brother Luke, who was left in their care by poor Richard, who was busy working. Unfortunately, Poon wasn't very happy about Luke's presence, but Ud's arrival made Seo-won happy because now Luke had a playmate at home. Later, Seo-won's friend, Nee, came to visit Poon, who was unwell. However, Nee kept talking about poor Richard being in a relationship with a foreign man, which annoyed Poon. After Nee left, Poon asked Seo-won not to bring him and Nee together again. In the kitchen, Pam asked Seo-won why Poon didn't like foreigners, and Seo-won explained that it began when poor Richard left Pam to move abroad, and people gossiped, accusing poor Richard of being involved in an affair. In the evening, poor Richard picked up Luke to take him home. There, Seo-won asked poor Rich to invite Luke over again another time, but Poon suddenly came out and reminded poor Richard not to burden Luke with others. Before leaving, poor Richard took the time to chat with Pam in the park and expressed concern about Pam's relationship with Donovan. She worried that Pam didn't know much about Donovan. However, Pam didn't pay much attention to her mother's advice. Inside the house, while Seo-won was cleaning up Luke's toys, Poon expressed curiosity about what poor Richard was discussing with Pam outside. At that time, Seo-won tried to calm him down by suggesting that poor Richard might have had something important to convey to Pam. During that time, Poon also complained about Luke's toys and pictures scattered on the floor, but secretly kept one of Luke's pictures for himself. At the convenience store, Pam was torn between choosing her family and herself, so she sought advice from Ud. He shared his own experience about his parents not approving of him opening a mini-market because they wanted him to study engineering. However, Ud pursued both his dream of running the mini-market and studying engineering, and eventually, his parents came to accept his decision. When Pam met Donovan, she appeared more reserved, and he asked what was on her mind. She explained that Poon didn't like her being in a relationship with someone from a foreign background. Donovan assured her that he was willing to face Poon because he genuinely loved her. On another day, Da had rhinoplasty to fix her nose, which had been injured during a dinner incident with Donovan. She also contacted someone to investigate something. The following day, Pam saw photos from Donovan and Jessica's photo shoot again. At that time, poor Richard was still annoyed that her daughter was involved with Donovan. But Pam insisted that she was an adult and would find her own way to convince Poon about her relationship with Donovan. While in the restroom, Pam ran into Jessica, who was resting. Jessica tried to make Pam jealous by saying Donovan liked her, but Pam questioned why he had avoided her and went up to the balcony of her room during their beach photo shoot. Jessica couldn't provide a clear answer and chose to leave the restroom. On another occasion, Pam greeted Ud, who was fixing Poon's fan, and he playfully teased her until she reminded him that she already had a boyfriend. Ud admitted he felt sad when he found out she had a boyfriend, but hoped they could still be friends. Hearing that, Pam agreed to this. Later, Pam went to Donovan's house to pack his clothes because he was going to a fashion show out of town. During her visit, she asked if Jessica was participating in the event, but Donovan didn't answer and tried to kiss her instead. Pam refused and asked him to answer her question. Eventually, Donovan told Pam that Jessica was not taking part in the fashion show. The next day, Pam made a video call to Donovan, telling him that a male teacher at school had invited her to dinner. She made up this story to make Donovan jealous, but her plan failed because Donovan gave her permission to go. She confessed that she had lied because she missed him. Donovan then mentioned he would attend a party after the fashion show, and Pam advised him not to drink too much and get drunk. At the party venue, to everyone's surprise, Jessica showed up and even live-streamed the event with Donovan on her social media to share the party's atmosphere that night. On the other hand, Donovan appeared to be drunk after losing a game with his friends. When he was alone, Jessica asked him for a ride home, but Donovan refused, which led her to start teasing him. Donovan reminded her that he couldn't do it because he was in a serious relationship with Pam. Jessica then brought up their past and expressed her desire to be with him again, but Donovan rejected her, and she decided to leave immediately. Later, Donovan felt sorry for Jessica, who had to go home alone, so he eventually decided to give her a ride. During the car ride, Jessica attempted to tease Donovan again, but he chose to let her do as she pleased, reminding her that it was the last time he would do it for her. At the same time, Pam couldn't stop thinking about Donovan, who was out of town, so she went to the mini-market to buy some food and calm herself down. As for Donovan and Jessica, they were both surprised by the presence of Da, who intentionally took a photo of the two of them. Jessica quickly got out of the car and tried to grab Da's phone, while Donovan decided to leave, with Da following him. Jessica, visibly annoyed, left behind her clothing, and placed an unused contraceptive device in Donovan's car. After searching for a long time, Pam finally discovered birth control items in Donovan's car, which made her really upset. When he came into the house, she threw the items at him and asked if he had ever dotted Jessica. He admitted that he had dotted Jessica in the past, but they weren't together anymore. Even though Donovan told the truth, Pam still felt let down. He reassured her that Jessica was just someone from his past when he didn't have a girlfriend in Thailand, and now he has chosen Pam as the one he truly loves. Then Pam asked if there were any other secrets he was keeping, and he admitted he had a photo shoot with Jessica the next day. The next day, Pam decided to visit the photo shoot location for Donovan and Jessica, but it ended up hurting her to see them getting close and posing intimately. She accidentally bumped into a crew member, and Donovan came over to ask why she had come without telling him. Pam explained that she only wanted to check his schedule, and Donovan comforted her with a kiss, promising not to leave her. While Pam was in the restroom, Jessica once again tried to make Pam jealous of her closeness to Donovan. But Pam managed to scare Jessica by cornering her and warning her to stop bothering him. Not long after, Pam was chatting with Donovan when a female staff member informed him that he had received a contract for a fashion show in Singapore. Pam was excited to hear the good news and waited for him while he had a meeting with some people. During this time, Pam bumped into Da, who implied that Pam shouldn't be there as she wasn't Donovan's manager. Da also hinted that Pam didn't really know who Donovan truly was. After Donovan finished the meeting, he talked to Pam about Da offering him the job despite their personal issues. At that time, he considered rejecting the project, but Pam advised against it, as Da's project could help him become an international model and make it easier for him to find Maria. Since getting the project, Donovan became busier and had less time to spend with Pam. One day he had a nightmare about Maria being in a bad situation, which made him chase and confront the attacker. After waking up from the nightmare, Donovan remembered his childhood in America when he had to work as a street fighter to make money. He recalled finding Maria badly injured and fighting the person responsible until they were severely hurt. Meanwhile, back home, Luke, who was playing at Poon's house, used Poon's phone to call Pam and ask her to come home and buy ice cream for him. After all the kindergarten students had left, Donovan approached Pam and invited her to have dinner together. However, she declined, saying she had plans to eat with her family. Hearing that, Donovan felt a bit disappointed, but then told her that he would be attending Milan Fashion Week. Pam was thrilled to hear about his achievement. A little later, Donovan accompanied Pam while she was shopping, and she received a message from Da about Donovan's past as an ex-convict. Soon after, Pam contacted Da, who explained that Donovan had been in prison in America. Pam, still in disbelief, secretly searched the internet to confirm it with Donovan. At the same time, Seo-won called and asked for ice cream for Luke, so Pam said she would be home soon. When Pam got home, she gave Luke his ice cream and then went to her room to research more about Donovan's past. At the same time, Pete was also reading the same news about Donovan. Meanwhile, Donovan had just arrived home and was surprised to find Da there. He threatened to report her to the police if she kept bothering him. Suddenly, she held a knife to her neck, smiled, and dared him to harm her, also telling him to enjoy his downfall because he refused to comply with her. On the other hand, Wood was also taken aback when he saw various news about Donovan on social media. After Da left Donovan's place, he reached out to Pam to explain everything, but she seemed disappointed, even though she had previously encouraged him to open up about things he had hidden from her. There, Donovan could only apologize, and after they hung up, they both shed tears. The next morning, Pam went to work with a distant look, so she didn't notice when Wood called her. During school, she shared a story about the friendship between a wolf and a sheep. When a student asked why a sheep would be friends with wolves, who were often seen as evil, she replied that not all wolves were bad. Before long, Wood arrived with food for Pam, knowing that she had been dealing with a lot of problems lately. Meanwhile, Donovan appeared perplexed until Pam arrived with food for him. Seeing her, he rushed to hug her while tears streamed down his face. Pam mentioned that she was trying to trust him again, and he thanked her while promising to tell her everything. In the past, Donovan discovered Maria had been beaten and mistreated by a man, which enraged him, and he fought the man fiercely. The police arrived at the scene and arrested Donovan, sentencing him to prison, while Maria was taken to the hospital. In the present, Pam attempts to rebuild her trust in Donovan, as he tearfully regrets not sharing his past with her sooner. On another occasion, Pete informed Jessica that all her work contracts had been canceled. Jessica, who who was receiving treatment at the same place as Da, crossed paths with Da and shared her frustration about losing her job, similar to what had happened to Donovan. Meanwhile, Pam was by Donovan's side as he prepared for a press conference to address the rumors circulating on social media. During the event, Donovan shared his life story in America, where he faced many challenges and ended up in prison after defending himself against a man who had mistreated him and a woman named Maria. While in prison, Maria used to visit him regularly, but one day, she stopped coming. After his release, Donovan learned that Maria had moved to Thailand, so he made the decision to search for her there. As he wrapped up the press conference, Donovan expressed his hope that Maria would reach out to him after seeing the event, because he missed her deeply. At that moment, a journalist raised their hand and apologized for being the first to report on Donovan's past without verifying the facts. Hearing that, Donovan accepted the apology and concluded the press conference. Meanwhile, at the local convenience store, Wood and his employees were tuned into Donovan's press conference, completely unaware of the challenges he had faced in his life. On the other hand, Donovan hugged Pam tightly, expressing his gratitude for her support during his tough times. At the same time, Da felt frustrated as her plan to bring Donovan down had failed, especially since it seemed like everyone believed what he said during the press conference. After their chat, Donovan and Pam headed downstairs with the intention of going home. Suddenly, Pete approached them and handed them Maria's address, which he and Po Richard had obtained from Maria's former agency. Without much thought, Donovan, accompanied by Pam, headed to the given address. When they arrived at the house, Donovan was reminded of a painful event from his past that left him feeling uneasy. There, Pam helped him catch his breath and calm down. Shortly after, Anya arrived, and Donovan immediately asked about Maria. However, Anya admitted that she didn't know Maria and tried to enter the house. Donovan tried to stop her, suspecting that she might have information about his older sister. To avoid causing a scene, Pam invited Donovan to leave Anya's house. To lift his spirits, Pam took Donovan to a boxing practice session until they both felt exhausted. While resting, she assured him that they would find Maria and promised to be by his side. A little while later, Donovan received a message from an unknown number inviting him to meet somewhere. The following day, Donovan and Pam headed to a church to meet the person who had sent the message the day before. Surprisingly, they meet Anya once again, and she apologized for not being able to talk much about Maria in front of her husband. Anya then revealed that she had been in a relationship with Maria in America, and showed her engagement ring with Maria as proof. Donovan compared the ring with the one he had and asked about Maria's whereabouts. Anya informed him that Maria was buried outside the church. Donovan and Pam followed Anya as she walked out of the church, and they were shocked to see a restaurant with a gravestone that had Maria's name on it. Anya also shared the story of her first meeting with Maria, who had helped her when she lost her wallet on the street. After that, Anya went to America to study acting and became closer to Maria, eventually leading to a romantic relationship and the exchange of couple rings. Sadly, their time together was cut short when Anya's family forced her to return to Thailand after her father's death, causing hardship for Maria. Meanwhile, Anya, back in Thailand, was forced into marriage by her family. One day, Maria flew to Thailand to meet Anya and was shocked to discover that Anya was pregnant. Feeling betrayed, Maria sent a final message to Anya before taking a drastic step. After hearing this story, Donovan approached Maria's grave in tears, and Pam comforted him. After visiting Maria's grave, Donovan and Pam grabbed some food. While eating, he expressed his desire to keep being together with Pam and invited her to live with him. However, Pam explained that in Thai culture, it's not considered normal to live with a partner before getting married. Moreover, Poon, who has conservative views, wouldn't allow it. The situation had become even more complicated after Po Richard was involved in inappropriate behavior. Donovan believed that all he needed to do was talk to Poon and get his permission for Pam to live with him. Hearing this, Pam explained to Donovan that Poon had reservations about people from foreign backgrounds. Because of this, she asked Donovan for some time to talk to Poon about their relationship. On their way home, Pam suddenly invited Donovan to her house to meet Poon. When they arrived, Pam asked Donovan to wait while she talked to Poon privately. Soon after, Pam met Ood, who was fixing something, and he kindly excused himself so Pam could have a private conversation with Poon. After Poon took his medicine, Pam informed him that she had a boyfriend and asked Poon not to worry about her anymore. At the same time, Ood overheard Pam's conversation. He had planned to fix some broken lights in Poon's house, but changed his mind when he saw Donovan approaching. Pam, upon meeting Donovan, had a sudden change of heart and asked him not to come inside, saying she wanted to talk to Poon alone. In that moment, Donovan seemed reluctant at first, but eventually agreed with Pam's idea after she pleaded with him. After Donovan got back home, Pam, who was in her room, received a message from him asking about the results of her conversation with her grandfather. However, Pam intentionally didn't respond because she still lacked the courage to tell Poon about Donovan. A few days later, Donovan got another photoshoot project for a jewelry product. When he arrived at the photoshoot location, he was surprised to find that the set resembled a prison, reminding him of his past when he had been incarcerated. While Pete went to meet their client, Donovan went to the dressing room. On the other hand, Pam was busy dropping off her students, who were being picked up by their parents, so she didn't answer Donovan's phone call. Later, when she checked her phone and saw Donovan's message asking about the results of her conversation with Poon, Pam contacted him to share the outcome. Then, Donovan sent her the location where he was having the photo shoot. In the dressing room, Pete approached Donovan to show him the costume for the photo shoot and explain the concept they would be using. Even though the concept reminded Donovan of his difficult past, he decided to be professional and accepted the job. A little later, after the first photo session was completed, Da approached Donovan and tried to provoke him by mentioning his past. Fortunately, he didn't react to her words and chose to take a break. Meanwhile, Pam entered an empty room and was surprised when Donovan suddenly joined her there. Da, who appeared again, seemed to hint at their closeness, and Pam was shocked to learn that Donovan was still working on Da's project. There, Donovan explained that he didn't know it was Da's project, and if Pete had known from the beginning, he believed Pete would have declined the job. Da then asked Donovan to return to the photoshoot set and finish his work, while Pam waited for him in the dressing room. There, Da continued to pay attention to Pam, making her feel uncomfortable, especially after Da boasted about her wealth. During this time, Da approached Pam and asked if she really loved Donovan. Without hesitation, Pam confirmed her feelings and Da said she would give in. As she walked away, she also made a comment about Pam's worn-out bag. Da then went to the photoshoot location and directed Donovan to do several poses as she desired. At home, Poon, who was curious about Pam's boyfriend, asked Ud, who was watering the plants, about him. Ud lied and said he didn't know, which only made Poon more curious about his granddaughter's boyfriend. Back in the dressing room, Pam went to the restroom and accidentally left her bag behind. She saw the photoshoot Donovan was doing. After the photoshoot, he approached Pam and nearly kissed her, but Pete reminded them to do that in another room. Shortly after, Da suddenly came shouting that her ring was missing and asked everyone at the shoot to be checked. During the search, surprisingly, Da's ring was found in Pam's bag, even though Pam hadn't stolen it at all. She suspected that Da had set her up. Annoyed, Pam claimed that Da targeted her intentionally because Da had repeatedly failed to make Donovan suffer. Da got angry and slapped Pam. Donovan challenged Da to report the case to the police and said he'd pay a fine if Pam was proven guilty of theft. Da immediately called the police to report her missing jewelry, and when they arrived, they arrested Pam. Pam cried and admitted she was scared, so Donovan tried to comfort her by saying he would be with her. Then, Da said that they made a good couple because they were both criminals. Donovan was about to confront Da, but Pete stopped him. At the police station, Pam tried to explain that Da had framed her by putting the ring in her bag intentionally. Unfortunately, the police couldn't simply believe her words because she didn't have any evidence to support her claim. Pam, feeling increasingly emotional, mentioned that Da might have used her connections and money to set her up. However, the police officers didn't want to hear Pam out and placed her in a detention cell. Pam, still in shock from the incident, wished it was all just a bad dream. The following day, Pam, who had been released, met Donovan and hugged him tightly while crying. She was afraid her grandparents would find out about her time in custody. Donovan comforted her and asked her not to worry anymore. They went to the park together, and there Donovan told Pam that if they hadn't met, she wouldn't have gone through all these hardships. Because of that, he decided to break up with her so she could be free from the people who always targeted him. Pam couldn't believe Donovan wanted to end their relationship and tried to stop him, but he only apologized and left. On her way home, Pam, heartbroken, stopped by Ud's mini market and ended up vomiting. Seeing that, Ud approached her, and Pam hugged him while crying. He kindly gave her ice to reduce the swelling around her eyes before she headed home. When Ud asked what happened, Pam finally shared that she had just broken up with Donovan. She had even gone to Donovan's house to talk about why he ended things, but he didn't answer the door. Wood heard her story and comforted Pam by patting her on the back. On another note, poor Richard went to Da's office and poured water on her after hearing the news that Da had intentionally framed Pam to make her look like a thief. At his home, Donovan, who seemed puzzled, called Jessica and told her that he had done what she asked for. Earlier, Donovan had tried to find surveillance camera footage in the dressing room but couldn't locate any. As he was leaving the building, Jessica approached him and offered to help get Pam out of prison on the condition that he break up with Pam. Despite the difficulty of the situation, Donovan agreed to Jessica's conditions. She then went to the police station to submit a video recording showing Da putting the jewelry into Pam's bag. Surprisingly, Jessica had entered the dressing room with a man before Da's actions and had accidentally witnessed Da's suspicious behavior, prompting her to record the incident. The next day, the police called in Da and showed her a video from Jessica. The police officers said that with this evidence, Da could face punishment for making false accusations and defamation. Da left feeling frustrated that her plan had failed once again. She also noticed Jessica laughing at her, and it dawned on her that Jessica was the one who had secretly recorded her putting the ring in Pam's bag. Soon after, Jessica quickly left, and Da tried to chase her. However, she was surprised when she saw poor Richard and several journalists waiting to interview her. Da attempted to avoid the journalists. As for Pam, she remained heartbroken and often seemed lost in thought. Even Poon began to worry about her health and suggested she take a few days off. Pam said she was okay, and Poon also asked about her boyfriend, whom she hadn't introduced yet. He hoped that by meeting him, he could confirm that Pam's boyfriend was a good man. Before leaving, Poon gave his grandfather some medicine to help her recover quickly. After her grandfather's passing, Pam secretly cried because now she couldn't introduce Donovan to Poon, as they had completely broken up. At school, Luke, who used to be one of Pam's students, noticed that she looked sad. He wanted to cheer her up, so he took Pam to meet Ood. When they arrived at the mini market, Pam appeared alone because Luke had gone home and just asked her to buy him some ice cream. While Thanaset took Pam's order, but gave her a report card and requested her assessment. As time passed, Pam seemed to be getting closer to Ood, while Pa Richard's company, which had been struggling, managed to survive. On the other hand, Donovan disappeared from the scene after his breakup with Pam. Jessica received a call notifying her that her job had been canceled due to a scandal involving a man. Little did she know that this was all part of Da's plan to ruin Jessica. Unwilling to accept defeat, Jessica went to Da's clinic for treatment and discreetly added a few drops of medicine to the face cream she was going to use. With her face covered in red spots, Jessica shows up from the treatment room, causing a scene that led to trouble for Da's clinic and its closure. Frustrated, Da decided to leave Thailand. 10 months later, Donovan visited Maria's grave with 2 hot dogs. While enjoying his meal, he couldn't help but cry as he missed her deeply. On the flip side, Pam was busy grading her students' work when Seo-won came by with some food. At that time, Pam showed her Ood's report card, which she hadn't graded yet. Seo-won suggested that Pam follow her heart to assess Ood's report card. Another time, while Pam was tying her hair, she suddenly thought of Donovan. Then she decided to come downstairs and asked her grandmother to cut her hair. Seo-won warned her not to regret this decision, and then began cutting her granddaughter's hair. In the afternoon, Pam went to Ood's mini market with her new haircut to return the report card he had given her. There, Ood had received perfect scores in all categories. Pam compared Ood to a mini market that offers various goods, but sometimes there are items you can't find in a mini market. Because of this, Pam asked him not to waste his time on her, and Ood tried to accept her decision. On another occasion, Ood went to see Donovan, who was practicing boxing. He had asked Pete about Donovan's whereabouts. There, Ood informed Donovan that his declaration of love had been rejected by Pam, but Donovan didn't seem bothered by it. Ood also asked about why Donovan had left Pam, but he refused to tell the details. Ood then challenged Donovan to a boxing match, promising that if he managed to defeat Donovan, then Donovan had to tell him everything. During the match, it seems that Donovan was intentionally not attacking Ood, who had struggled with boxing. Ood took advantage of this and landed a hit on Donovan, who was assisting him. As a result, Donovan admitted that he had made an agreement with Jessica to leave Pam because Jessica had evidence that could clear Pam's name from Da's accusations. Ood then questioned Donovan's promise to protect Pam, but he remained silent, and Ood eventually left the place. Meanwhile, Jessica was busy with a photo shoot, but she got frustrated when it went on longer than planned. Eventually, she decided to leave the shoot. In the parking lot, Donovan approached her and asked her to cancel the agreement they had regarding Pam. He was willing to do anything to persuade Jessica to cancel it. Jessica then requested Donovan to show her his commitment by doing something specific. Donovan agreed to one request but drew the line at another, explaining that he couldn't face Pam if he slept with another woman. Jessica heard this and decided to cancel the agreement, which made Donovan happy, and they shared a hug. Later, Jessica remembered her conversation with Oud from the previous day when he questioned why she had made an agreement with Donovan to keep him away from Pam. She admitted that her annoyance stemmed from her inability to have Donovan for herself, not wanting someone else to have him, but told her that if she truly loved someone, she should be willing to do whatever it takes to make that person happy, even if it means letting them be with someone else. Jessica couldn't help but smile ironically at Oud's confession of his love for Pam and his willingness to do anything for her happiness. Back in the present, Jessica was seen crying as she remembered Oud's words. After the school day ended, Pam stayed behind, reminiscing about the moments she shared with Donovan at the school. Soon, Donovan appeared and explained everything, including why he had left her. He mentioned his plan to go back to America, but left the decision up to Pam. Pam was frustrated and tearful, expressing her feelings about Donovan coming and going as he pleased. In a moment of emotion, she tore up Donovan's plane ticket and pleaded with him never to leave her again. Donovan hugged Pam, wiping away her tears. On another day, Pam met Oud at the minimarket to thank him for all his help. Shortly after, Oud met an old friend who seemed interested in him. Pam, observing from a distance, smiled at their closeness. Donovan approached her, expressing his intention to meet her grandparents. Initially hesitant, Pam agreed after his persuasion, and they set off to introduce him to Poon. Upon arriving at Poon's house, the whole family, including Po Richard and Luke, gathered. Donovan introduced himself as Pam's boyfriend. Poon was silent upon seeing the arrival of a foreign man he had previously thought was Oud's friend, and he went to retrieve a firearm from his room. When Poon pointed the gun at Donovan, everyone started to panic. Donovan, however, attempted to convince Poon that he genuinely loved Pam. People in the room tried to intervene and disarm Poon, leading to a struggle that resulted in an accidental gunshot, hitting Po Richard in the stomach. In a hurry, they all rushed Po Richard to the hospital for immediate medical attention. Seo-won and Luke felt anger towards Poon for causing harm to Po Richard. At that moment, Pam was in tears, fearing the loss of her mother. Poon, on the other hand, remained silent, overwhelmed by guilt for injuring his daughter. After a while, the doctor finally emerged with news that Po Richard's condition had stabilized following the successful removal of the bullet from her stomach. Pam, anxiously waiting by her mother's side, helped Po Richard sit up when she woke up. At that moment, Po Richard apologized to Pam for her past behavior, especially for leaving Pam with her grandfather and grandmother. Then the two reconciled and shared a heartfelt hug after harboring resentment for so long. Shortly after, Luke, along with Seo-won and Poon, entered the room. After some conversation, Seo-won and the others left Poon alone with Po Richard to resolve their issues. The two then offered apologies to each other for their past mistakes and reconciled. In the final scene of the series, Pam and Donovan are at the beach, reminiscing about an incident at a hotel. In that moment, he recalls how Pam made his heart race, and he wanted to get to know her better. He then shows her a necklace with a ring that reads "My Dear Donovan." While Pam admires the ring, Donovan kneels down and proposes to her, asking her to marry him. At that time, Pam happily accepts and Donovan places the ring on her finger. They share a special moment by the seaside, and the series ends. The moral lesson from this series is when love crosses borders, make sure Grandpa's trigger finger isn't itchy or he will shot you down, and you better run.